You are looking at one-click blueprint factory with personal storage containers and dimensional depot uploaders. To be blatantly obvious, this is the perfect personal storage system in Satisfactory 1.0. Place the factory blueprint, connect power and resources, and as the time goes by, you will get dimensional cloud full of steel items for personal use. This factory produces everything in steel department, starting with steel beams, steel pipes and empty canisters. The factory also covers heavy modular frames and encased industrial beams. And as a byproduct overflow, we get a lot of concrete, iron plates, iron rods, screws, modular frames and even reinforced iron plates. Total of 11 items. Also, this factory implements power switch logic for priority of the items over others if necessary. For Satisfactory 1.0, this is the second fluctuator factory on my channel, and it shines as a part of a bigger system of several fluctuators. The system, where several blueprints can easily cover all the items for personal storage and dimensional cloud upload. In the first installment, I focused on overarching principles of blueprint factory design, but today we have very condensed factory layout. This time around, it is the perfect time to cover all the compact building techniques in Satisfactory 1.0. In short, this video covers factory schematics, floor-to-floor machinery layout, compact building techniques and a bit of exterior design. So without further ado, let's talk the schematics. Well, if you are a seasoned Satisfactory player, you can say that there is nothing new here, and you are not entirely correct. There are several new and powerful recipes for blueprint factories in Satisfactory 1.0. As I mentioned previously, this factory is very compact, and if not for the molded pipes alternative recipe, similar global output of the factory would require severe overclocking. Aside some bizarre reason where my brain actually imagined mold when I talk about molds and molded pipes, this recipe is a killer, just like mold. Molded pipes able to replace bunch of coal and iron with limestone. And this is the overarching idea of this factory. I want a factory with huge internal production of concrete for that dirty brutalism kink of mine. Maybe a flip of a switch to disable well all the higher tier items and I get all the concrete in the world. 270 per minute to be correct. Alright, the end goal of this factory is to use at least one manufacturer for heavy modular frames. And heavy encased frame is one of those recipes in Satisfactory that is not really an alternative, but rather an upgrade. Also, it works nicely with a combo of encased industrial pipes and molded pipes. Since we are so heavy on concrete, this factory is rather funky on the inputs. I went with limitation of 270 ore per minute for iron and coal, since 480 ore per minute and processing of that ore will not fit without severe overclocking to this factory. Also, limestone is a bit loaded, since this is like the stage of the game where we probably have no aluminum and Mark V belts, while going for triple Mark III belts or maybe dual Mark IV makes the only sense. And 3 Mark III belts are way more versatile. Also, this factory is designed in such a way that, well, total 810 limestone per minute with 3 Mark III belt can be actually replaced with a single Mark V belt of 780 limestone per minute. Perfect for endgame and those Satisfactory engineers with lower coefficient of workaholism. You know, like 1 belt and 1 miner instead of 3 belts and 3 miners. Only difference between inputs of 810 limestone and 780 limestone would be lower immediate output of overflow concrete. All the production lines still have enough resources even with 780 limestone per minute. And the rest of the factory is the means to an end. Once again, I am compacting iron plates with steel cast plate recipe, although it was probably more of a necessity for lowering down the iron use under 270 iron ore per minute. For real compaction, one severely overclocked constructor makes more sense over 2 foundries. Then the steel screws is the obvious choice for steel factory, and then there is the synergy of bolted iron plates and bolted frames with the steel screw recipe. And both steel rods and steel canisters are the nice addition for the personal storage, and now it is time to fit all this machinery into several floors. Both 9 industrial storage containers and 9 smelters fits evenly into 6x6 blueprint designer. And you ask like, what? 6x6? Why? When? Where? What? Yeah. I do import all my blueprints from Sandbox World anyway, and I would reach tier 9 probably by the end of year 2026 with my blueprint creation shenanigans. And to be honest, this factory would not fit into 5x5 without like a stack of power shards. So yeah, 6x6. Also, on the first floor there are 4 foundries for solid steel ingots. Solid steel ingots continue on the second floor with 3 more foundries, and after that second floor is closely tied to the third floor with bunch of concrete constructors. Total of 18 constructors to be correct. Concrete production is sandwiched in the middle of the factory, so I can fit both lower and upper machines quite easily. On the second floor we have 4 molded pipe foundries fed by exactly 7 concrete constructors, and also over here we have 2 more foundries for cast iron plates and 2 constructors for steel screws and steel canisters. On the fourth floor we start with 3 constructors for steel beams and 2 constructors for steel screws. Then steel screw constructors feed those 3 assemblers for bolted iron plates and bolted frames. Finally, we have 3 more assemblers for encased industrial pipes, and even more assemblers for encased industrial pipes on the final 5th floor. Also, heavy modular frame manufacturer is finally here. 5th floor houses all the dimensional deep uploaders, and in general they are connected to the buffer industrial storage container each, which is well down below. But in the case of overflow reinforced iron plates and modular frames, they have their buffers on the final 5th floor. Alright, as one can see, this is very jam-packed blueprint, and well, there are a lot of building techniques over here. And now, let's go into the detail what are those compact building techniques available in Satisfactory 1.0. To begin, let's explain clipping. There are several types of clipping in Satisfactory. There is so-called soft clipping introduced with update 5 years ago. Soft clipping allowed to place items inside the machine collision hitbox. Also, there is the hard clipping, which is, well, technically still soft clipping, but visually it is vastly different. For example, placing belts straight through the machinery or overlapping belts in a single plane. And then there are exploits that allow to place one machine inside of another, and to be fair, well, it's a fine line between features and exploits in Satisfactory. In my blueprints I use only soft visual clipping, and I try to avoid hard clipping, even with things like power cables if possible. To make your build compact, one needs to exploit verticality. And conveyor lift holes, ceiling mounts and conveyor belt elevators are your best friends. For example, one can connect simple constructor almost from underneath the machine. Just place the conveyor lift hole into the position by using a nudge tool with button H. Also, one can use half steps with the nudge tool while holding control. Once you are done with conveyor lift holes, just pop conveyor belt elevators into the sockets. You can swap direction of the conveyor belt elevator with the button R. Now, we can expand on this idea with the conveyor lift hole by placing merger or splitter over the output of the conveyor belt elevator. And this is how we can make a simple vertical manifold, compact and vertically efficient. Instead of conveyor lift holes, you can also use ceiling mounts to make vertical manifolds on the same floor. Now, let's go for another interesting trick. Sometimes you want to go 180-degree turn with your belt in a single vertical axis, but using the standard height of conveyor belt elevator may be not an option. Ever since the update 8, now we can use snapping of a merger or a splitter to bring our elevator 180-degree turn as low as possible. Just place mergers and splitters on the top of each other and add the lift. That's it. Another neat trick is to use ceiling mounts sort of submerged halfway into the ceiling. Just combine another layer of ceiling with a nudge tool and you get yourself another layer of belts on your ceiling. Obviously this works nicely only with the flat items like iron plates for example, but nevertheless this is another layer of compaction. Also, in Satisfactory 1.0, ceiling mounts can be placed on the floors. Another interesting combination of compact techniques is the side-by-side assemblers. Here you can feed one output from down below and another one by using splitter and conveyor lift combo. Simple as that. Sometimes it's really hard to make one 90-degree turn, but well, with a simple addition of splitter and merger, we can just adjust position of outputs and inputs. And surprisingly, these are all the main tricks used for the creation of vertical density in the blueprints. A bit of imagination and those several techniques can go a really long way, like in this particular blueprint. And speaking of this blueprint, well, there are 2 fully functional versions. One without exterior for lower material use, so-called OEM version. Well, the perfect starting point for custom exteriors and your own imagination and style. And this version is available for free on my Patreon. And then there is the version with a full exterior that is available in early access on Patreon. Huge thanks for everyone pitching in with early access support, and just a big respect to anyone going above with a bigger contributions. Shout out to this week new Patreon member, Tarlak Desai Drone, with a pledge above the Mr. Hamilton. This support means a lot, especially in reality where this channel do not receive any revenue from Google Ads anymore. Exteriors. This time around I am using similar style as in the first iron fluctuator. First I create blueprint for beam pattern and place it methodically with the notch tool, although I'm sort of like running out of inventory space to place huge blueprints like this, so I went with only single side full of LED panels. The roof is quite similar with asphalt foundations and angled windows, and manufacturer is just in the right position to stick out between windows. One can even add missing windows after well placing the blueprint itself. The color gradient is once again created with custom color tool in Satisfactory. Otherwise, blueprint will use preset colors bound to a save game instead of intended custom colors. I'm using cssgradient.io to make hex codes, and those codes are available inside of the readme file, so well, you can just download archive and use those exact hex codes to make something else, or maybe to just make different exterior. The blueprint installation instructions are also inside of the readme file, just go and read the readme file. Next week I would definitely focus on making electronics fluctuator, or maybe I would sprinkle a short 10 not obvious tricks video if I would be short on time. So like, share and subscribe. As always, thank you for watching, have a nice one, and Yakez out.